So we're going to be pleased and fortunate right now to have an opportunity to hear from Achim Nowak. He's a performance coach that does this for Fortune 500 companies. And we're going to get to have him right here at University of St. Joseph's at our Lessons in Leadership. Please join me for a warm welcome for Achim.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Ooh, that was very loud. Could somebody monitor that? I don't want to be that loud. And thank you for that awesome introduction. I'm one of those annoying people who really love to get up early in the morning. And I am just delighted that all of you showed up early as well and that we get to hang out together. I live in South Florida, so I cleaned up for you guys. Normally I run around in shorts and t-shirts. But as I was flying up yesterday, I had some interesting Hartford flashbacks. I lived in Manhattan for 20 years, and I had a long-standing relationship with Amherst College. And I worked there a lot. And like many Manhattanites, I did not have a car. So I would go up to the Port Authority and hop on my Peter Pan bus to Springfield. And just about the time that we were getting close to Hartford, I would invariably get antsy. And, you know, on Amtrak, you can go the aisles. You can't do it on the bus. And I would have to use the lavatory, and the lavatories in the back of the bus of Peter Pan are not very glamorous. And so when I saw the Capitol Dome appear, you know, I knew that Hartford was close, and I looked forward to going to your bus station to relieve myself, buy some candies, and get ready to go to Springfield. So this morning I feel like I've really arrived because this is so much more glamorous where we are. Now, Karen Buckman and I spoke last week, and she said, you know, we love your book because it's about connection, and we really believe in connection at Leadership Greater Hartford. And I trust all of you are here because you believe in connection. I see all the time, and you probably see as well, that folks who connect deeply, and I'm really stressing the word deeply, are a lot more successful in life. You know, folks want to follow people who create that connection. You know, we move through obstacles faster. You know, we get stuff done with grace. And at the same time, I think a lot of stuff in our society right now actually works against deep connections. You know, I'm a big social media guy. I love Twitter. I tweet all the time. But these are very short, brief, succinct communications. Like most writing is becoming shorter and shorter. Nobody wants to get a long email. But what happens, our written communications are becoming almost entirely transactional. So they're very crisp, but what we're getting rid of is any of the emotional stuff that creates the commitment and the buy-in. Now here's some good news in this, because when I started writing my book, there was some research that's done at MIT in Boston that really grabbed my attention and actually got me started on the book. And I want you to imagine for a moment that I'm going to pick 5 of you out of this audience. Let's say all 5 of you have your own successful businesses. And just imagine for a moment that next week you get to go in front of a committee of venture capitalists that have a bunch of money, and they're going to give one of you a whole bunch of money. Now imagine again that I'm going to take you maybe the night before on a little cocktail party reception. We're going to have cocktails and drinks and schmooze. And I'm going to measure what they call at MIT honest signals. And honest signals are the signals that our body sends out. It's like how much we gesture, how much we smile, how close we get to people, how much we sweat, all that stuff. And here's what I really want you to get. Based on measuring your honest signals, I will be able to predict who's going to win the pitch the next day. I will have no idea what you're going to say. I haven't seen your PowerPoint slides. I haven't seen your documents. That's the research that was done at MIT. And it really grabbed my attention. And when they were interviewed, the researchers were Sandy Pentland and Daniel Olguin. There's a place called the Human Dynamics Lab. And when they were interviewed at Harvard Business Review, they said, what's the one biggest distinguishing factor that makes a person more successful? They said personal energy. And notice when I say personal energy, I'm not talking about introversion, extroversion, which is how we tend to talk about in our culture. It's something way deeper than that. I see this as a coach all the time. We connect on the spoken level, but a lot of connections happen on the less obvious, less visible level. From my practice of coaching senior business leaders, and I find this is applicable to wherever you're working, and it works in your own life, personal life as well also. Okay, that's the good part. So in my experience, folks that connect really well connect on 4 levels. These levels go from the visible to the invisible realm, from the surface to the core. All of us in this room, every one of us, we play on these levels all the time, but most of us don't do it with a measure of consciousness or purpose. It's the stuff that's always going on, but people that connect really well really work with that stuff. So what are these 4 levels? The surface level is the talk level. That's what I'm doing right now. I was always taught that it's better to listen than to talk a lot. I agree with that, but at some point in the conversation, we have to say something, right? And what we say has the chance to either advance the conversation or not. So folks that do this well have a beautifully integrated skill set that's invisible to folks, and that's the key. It's just integrated into who they are, and that's how they shape conversations. So the second level, which we're going to talk about briefly, the deeper level for me is our relationship to personal power. How I own my own personal power, access it and use it well, and how I play with the power of other folks. The moment I already start diminishing my use of my own personal power, I'm diminishing the connection I have. And I'm going to break this down for you in a little bit because power is a complicated thing. Third level is the level of intent and personal intent. And because I come from a theater background, actors work with intent all the time. And it's very simple, but we need to choose it well. It's free, but we need to articulate it in a way that's helpful to a conversation. And the deepest level, in my experience, which is why I love the MIT research, is energy. Like that's the really big stuff. And in my experience, great connectors know how to access their energy. They know how to send it out. They know how to receive the energy of other folks. And when 2 or more people play on all 4 levels at the same time, that's when magic happens. And the magic is what we call flow. We tend to lose all sense of time. We're so engrossed in the conversation. We don't want it to end. And I can't control what you're doing, but I can certainly make sure that I'm clear on how I use my levels. So let's take it. I was told to just give you a little bit today and not tell you everything about the book, which is very hard for me to do. But I want to just give you a little tidbit about each of the 4 levels. And let me just a little anecdote. What I love about Leadership Greater Hartford, and there are many things. We had a dinner last night, so I know a little about you all. Is I love the fact that you do a lot of work with youth and different constituencies. In the early 90s, I spent 2 years training young people to be mediators in the New York City public school system. That was like very trendy in the 90s. And the biggest thing that I discovered in that work, we taught them skills like, validating, paraphrasing, reframing conversations, like pretty sophisticated stuff. And the moment those skills were internalized, number one, those young folks loved having conversations because they felt empowered to influence the conversations. I'm not going to talk about any of those skills here, but the beauty of it is once we internalize conversational skill sets, there is a joy in being in conversation, and I don't feel a victim to the flow. What it is, it's not about trying to manipulate or control, but we know how to shift conversations and create spaces that normally we can't create. Here's one thing I was always taught about how you engage with people. I was taught that if you talk to a primarily logical person, you better have a more logical conversation. And if you talk to a more emotional person, have a more emotional conversation. I no longer believe that. I think Madison Avenue has this all figured out. Like if you look at television advertising, like those 30-second spots where they're really trying to influence us to their product, there is no logic in there. They know that we don't commit to anything based on logic. It all goes to, regardless of what the product is, it's about happy families, living wonderful lives, being in nature, and celebrating, the universe, right? Regardless of the product, because they know deep down that's what touches us. The reason I'm stressing this, because in our written language right now, we've gotten rid of all the language that gets to the emotional connection. Like good old-fashioned adjectives. They just don't show up anymore. And I see in person more and more people who speak in person as if they're sending an email. And that's not a good thing. So one way to go, there are many ways to get to a stronger emotional connection, but one is to just use more emotive language. So I want to do like a 90-second thing with you all. I can tell you're an energetic crowd. So just turn to a person next to you. This is going to be simple. Turn to someone next to you. It can be 3 people, it's fine. Some of you are not turning to somebody. I'm not starting. Okay, turn, okay, turn. And it's okay to have 3 people, yes. Now I do need your attention again. Thank you. I'm just going to give you a phrase that has an emotional cue word in it, and I'm going to ask you to say it afterwards to somebody there. And you're going to be talking at the same time, which is obviously in real conversations not good, but you're just practicing language right now, okay? I am happy to be here. Say it. I am excited to meet you. I am frustrated with this project. I am ecstatic that it's Friday. Oh, that was good. Now, that may seem completely silly, but let me give an example of how I would do that kind of work with a client to give you some context. There's a woman named Melissa in Boston who I was coaching for a while. She was the VP of sales for a large biotech company that you all know. And Melissa all her folks were dispersed all over the country. So her main communication was in monthly telephone calls. The complaints about Melissa were that she is boring, puts people to sleep, and people do not want to be on the phone calls. And Melissa is a totally delightful person. So as I was working with Melissa, one thing she realized, Melissa said, is whenever somebody says something, the only thing I ever know how to say, that's great. And so I keep saying that's great a lot. And that's great is a nice phrase, but so one of her assignments was, what are 10 other ways of saying that's great? That was a written homework assignment. We spoke 2 weeks later, she said, and this sounds simple, it's actually hard, she said I could only come up with 8. And 8 is a lot, but the moment she had that, she said, I'm having so much more fun in these phone calls because I'm using different kinds of language. Because we tend to habitually use the same stuff. So this is a very simple way of playing with more emotive cues that people will respond to. And the beauty of that, I know this as a former theater director and acting coach, even if I'm not feeling excited, by using the word, I begin to feel excited because the energy of the word. Notice when you all said, I'm ecstatic, it's Friday. You probably didn't feel ecstatic when you walked in, but you sounded pretty ecstatic when you said the word, so you made it happen. So that's the power of this kind of language. Let's talk about the second level, which is the power level. I want to tell you my own little awakening story around this. My theater career in the 80s in New York, I was your typical workaholic showbiz theater director. I worked way too much. I was happy I wasn't waiting on tables, so I took every job I got, and I overcommitted. And the first time I took a break, I went to a retreat center in Sedona, Arizona, and we did a lot of really wild, funky, wonderful spiritual stuff. I don't have the whole morning to tell you about the experiences. It would be fun. But this place was run by a woman named Reverend Mona. And one moment, Reverend Mona pulled me aside, and she looked me in the eyes, and she said, you need to stop being a doormat. And I paused, Then I got really pissed that she said that because I was a celebrated theater director, had lots of reviews that said I was wonderful. And once I calmed down, I realized what she was saying is, you don't have a clue about how to actually use your personal power. And I knew instinctively that she was right, and I understood that because I didn't know how to do it, that inhibited my ability to be as effective as I could be with people. Now, I learned years later that there are power models, ways of taking something as abstract as power and breaking it down into different aspects. I use a model in the book that was developed with a psychologist in Miami. Her name is Dr. Margarita Guri, and we play with the notion of 5 power plugs. And I like the word plugs because plugs are sources of energy that we can plug into. We all have them, but we need to plug into them. I'm going to give you a very quick overview. Position power is obviously one, which is the power that comes with our job, with our role. And it sounds very simple, but how we actually use that well to advantage to get things done is actually not so simple. The other one is relationship power. Our ability to quickly establish relationships that are relevant and sustainable. The third one is our expertise power. Again, sounds very simple, but I have a colleague, Dawn Denver, at the United Nations. She's in charge of training there, and she said, people want me to be the expert, and they resent me for being the expert. So how we actually use expertise power well is not simple at all. Fourth one is body power and our relationship to our body and how we hold that. On a very simple level, when we feel sick, the body power isn't very strong, and I'm simply not able to engage as well. And the last one is charisma power. Now, I hate the fact that I can't talk about all of them, so I'm just going to pick the one that I think in business situations comes into play a lot, which is position power. All of us from a very young age on are usually implicitly told about how we play with position power. I'm originally from Germany, and I'm a German Foreign Service child. So between the ages of 10 and 14, we lived in Ankara, Turkey. And my parents are completely non-religious, but once a month there would be a Protestant minister would come from Istanbul and do a service, and we went. And everybody went. And I just remember as a child, we sat, actually it was a hall sort of like this. It was set up theater style, and the ambassador would sit in the front row. The cultural attaché sat in the 3rd or 4th row. The chancellor sat in the 10th row, and we always sat behind the chancellor. So I got very early that we were not very important. I got it. On top of it, what my mom would do if somebody from the front rows would come over and say hello, my mom would almost whisper, like almost bow and defer to them. Not consciously, but that's how she related to people who had more position power. All of us have stories about that. Now, I coach very powerful business leaders right now, and hopefully it's clear that I have to get rid of that story. That makes sense, right? Little boy from Turkey doesn't need to show up anymore. It's just not a good idea. That sounds simple, but it isn't. I'm thinking of a company right now. Bob is the CEO. This is an $8 billion corporation. Bob is a very approachable guy. He has 11 people on his executive team who are all really powerful, make a lot of money. And when I watch them, I feel like these 11 people still play small around Bob's position power. It's shocking. And because they play small, they don't take advantage of the opportunity to influence the CEO of their company because they haven't figured this one out. And we play it out all the time, so it really behooves us to look at that. One very simple guidance I would give you all on that one is explicitly acknowledge position power. Let's say if you were Bob right now, hypothetically, you don't have to respond, I just need somebody to talk to. I would say, hi Bob, you as a CEO must have da 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 da. It's okay to explicitly acknowledge it. When I work with clients and they say, well, that just sounds like I'm sucking up to Bob. No, you're not sucking up to Bob. You're honoring what's actually reality, right? The other stuff then is how do I stay present in a conversation with you and don't disappear and hide? Because that's another thing that folks do all the time. So I want to honor your position and stay present at the same time. And none of this is easy. Let's talk about intent. In the last 20, 30 years, and because of authors like Wayne Dyer and the New Age movement, there's been amazing stuff written about the power of intention. Because I come from theater, and I love talking about this week because it's the Friday before the Oscars. And there have been some amazing movies out, and hopefully some of you have seen those movies. And when I watch an actor, I watch their performance, but I kind of see the homework that they've done. What great actors do, they're given a script, and we think, well, they just learn their lines, right? And then they get in touch with the emotions of what's going on, and that's part of it. But what an actor does, he or she, will take a script and break it down into chunks, like different units. Again, if I'm acting with you, John, and then chunk by chunk, I think about, so how do I want to impact John in this section? And actors call it the objective. I use the word intent or intention. It's a very simple action verb that becomes like this inner mantra that guides how I want to engage with you. Classic intentions in business is I want to inspire you. I want to excite you. I want to challenge you. I want to provoke you. And the idea is that if I'm clear on what that intent is and I hold it in my mind, it changes the way the words come out. That's the power of it. And it usually tends to charge the way words come out. And that's something very easy to play with. And it has to be an action verb. It needs to be compelling. It needs to be something that you have a visceral reaction to. If I want to excite you, it doesn't do it for you, pick a verb that works for you. And I coach people on this all the time, and the change in how they show up is instant. And it's that simple, but it's our choice. Let's jump to the deepest level, which is the energy level. And energy is like almost impossible to contain and define because it's so big. Like, how do you talk about energy? For the last 10 years, I've been teaching a class every summer at UMass in Amherst in the MBA program. And so I have young MBA and accounting students. And I always say, so how do you know somebody has good personal energy? And I was just writing the book. There was a young lady who raised her hand. She said, well, they're alive. And I thought that was a great answer because that captures it, right? And alive means, to me, it means every part of you is alive. We're mentally alive, we're physically alive, we're emotionally alive, we're spiritually alive. And we're cellularly alive, and we get all of that. So that's the beauty of it. I think one of the big challenges in Western culture is that most of us are taught to think, when it comes to personal energy, that we're either an introvert or an extrovert. And if you're an introvert, you primarily get energy from your thoughts, your ideas, from quiet time, from reading. And if you're an extrovert, you primarily get your energy from outer people, and you get stimulated by that. And while I believe there is some truth to it, it's the old Jungian approach, I don't think it's that helpful. Daniel Pink, who's an author I really admire, said we need to be ambiverts. Ambiverts means we play comfortably on both sides. Because I'm an acting coach, this is what I do, is I assume you're already good at it, but let's play with the range a little bit. Let's dance on the edge. So I love the term ambivert. The rest of the world actually has a whole other term that we tend to not use in this country for the big energy, and they call it life force. The Chinese call it qi, the Japanese call it ki, the Hindus call it prana. It's the idea of what I call the really big energy. That every one of us can learn how to access this energy, whether you're introvert or extrovert, it just doesn't matter. So this stuff can be learned. I've talked to some of you last night, so I know that a bunch of you know about this stuff. The most powerful for me was learning about the chakras, which is a Hindu approach to energy, and it's the idea that my spine is like an energy highway, where energy flows from the top to the bottom, and there are 7 energy centers, and there are different colors associated with them. And once I learn how to open up the chakras, and I want to stress this, if you've never done this, this may sound very mystical. It's so easy to learn how to do that. Usually with a teacher, my energy flows differently, and the way people tend to experience us, they tend to just receive us as usually a pretty happy, contented person. And people are much more likely to engage with us. And it just means the chakras have been opened. There are a lot of qi practices from China, qigong, tai chi, reiki. Yoga is a wonderful practice. So one thing when I coach, an executive who's too uptight, I send them to yoga class because it's readily available, and yoga is about breathing deeply into who we are, and by breathing deeply into it, I open up more of who I am. It's very powerful. So the beauty of all of this stuff, and I just want to entice you to explore that, because there's a great personal benefit to exploring this. There are people in your communities who teach this, and you will have an immediate business benefit because you will show up as a larger, more energetic person. And you need to do nothing to make it happen. It happens by itself. That's the beauty. That's the great part of this. So, again, just to summarize, folks who connect well really play well on all four of these levels. They use language well. They use it strategically in a way that's integrated and not visible. They're comfortable with their own power. They use it well, and they play well with the power of others. They tend to show up in situations with conscious intent. They don't just stumble through situations. Their intent helps to influence what happens. And they know how to access their energy, and they know how to play with the energy of other folks. And the more we do that, the more we get into what I call infectious conversations, where we just don't want the conversation to end. In 12-step programs, they call this the promises. And the promises is really what happens once you get out of your own way. So just to wrap this up, I want to read a little story to you. I get myself into some very cool conversations that are usually totally spontaneous, not planned. And this is one that happened as I was writing this book, so consider this one of the promises. And this is actually a story about a conversation I had with a cab driver in Chicago. But so I like the idea that we're actually going on a car ride, but I also like the idea that the car ride is like a metaphor. Because anytime, if you and I have a conversation, we're going on a ride together. It's a ride into the unknown. And in great conversations, the role of car and driver keeps shifting. Does that make sense? And that's the beauty. In bad conversations, it doesn't happen. The other metaphor that I really like is any conversation is also, for me, it's a walk. It's a walk down a long hallway full of doors. The doors for me are the doors to possibility. My job is to notice the doors and be willing to open them. Okay? So here we go. It's midday in downtown Chicago on a sweltering August afternoon. I dash out of the Wyndham Hotel and hail a taxi to head to O'Hare Airport. I slide into the back seat and pull the door shut. The cab, as it turns out, is an old Lincoln Mercury that has seen better days. The windows are cracked wide open and the air conditioning is not on. Author, can we turn on the AC? Driver, why don't you move to the front seat? I instinctively get that it will be easier to cool just the two seats in front of the plexiglass partition. I jump out of the car and plop myself down next to him. The air slowly comes on. Driver, you know, your glasses look intimidating. He says it to me seconds after I slide into the seat next to him. I look at him for the first time really as he utters these words. He's a wiry, dark-skinned man, short in his late 60s, I guess. He leans into the steering wheel with a slight hunch as he drives. I'm surprised by his comment. Surprised because he said it, and surprised because 2 nights earlier I had dinner with my friend Vivian Isaac in Philadelphia, and the topic of my glasses had come up. Author, these glasses are a little nerdy. I kind of like that look. And then I decide to tell him about my dinner with Vivian. Author, I had dinner with a friend in Philadelphia 2 nights ago. I had not seen her in a couple of years, and she had not seen me with these glasses. She said to me right at the start of dinner, you know, I like these glasses, but you look intimidating in them. Maybe you both are right. Maybe I do look intimidating. We banter back and forth about the implications of this coincidence. Driver, it's only 2 comments. This is not statistically valid. The variance is too great. I notice that he has a slight accent as he speaks. Accents fascinate me, and his speech reminds me of some of the men I met when I lived in Tobago. Author, where are you from? Driver, my mother's womb. I am both amused and annoyed by this answer. I know I won't settle for this quip of his. Author, you know I lived in Trinidad and Tobago for a while. I have a hunch you're from somewhere down in the islands. Driver, guess. Author, I won't guess, just tell me. I hear the irritation in my voice. Driver, the Cape Verde Islands. Do you know where they are? Author, I do. Do you know the music of Cesaria Evora? Evora is a singer from Cape Verde who has gained a large international following. Driver, yes I do. So what kind of music do you like? I have many answers to that simple question, but I decide to tell him the first thing that comes to mind. Author, I like trance and electronic music. I like it because it's mindless and I don't have to think when I listen to it. I have the new Britney Spears CD in my car stereo right now. I listen to it over and over. I think Britney Spears is actually a god-awful singer, but I like this CD. Driver, I like classical music and I like jazz. Author, I like that music too sometimes. Then I remember my other kind of music. I practice Hinduism. I often go to an ashram in Miami where I meditate and where we chant in Sanskrit. I also love that kind of music. He looks at me and says nothing, drives on in silence. After a pause, he responds, I have been meditating for many years. You know, everything in life is about energy. And meditation is a way in which I connect with energy, all of the energy. My driver has no idea that I'm in the middle of writing a book about energetic connections. Author, I like chanting in Sanskrit because the words and the chants carry an incredible energy. He turns off the classical music station that has been playing. Driver, here's the mantra I chant when I meditate. He proceeds to chant for me. It is a low wailing hum that seems to grow in volume as the sound extends. I notice his deep voice deeper than his speaking voice and hear the vibrations in the hum sound. He stops after 20-25 seconds. Then, as if for emphasis, he chants a second time. When he's finished, we both are silent for a little while. Driver, did you notice the smile on my face when you told me you chant? This comment of his makes me smile. I say nothing. Driver, there are no accidents in life. I hardly ever ask anybody to sit up front with me. It has been years since I have asked anybody to come up. I glance at him and notice again how wiry his body looks, how he seems to hunch forward with such determination as he drives. Driver, most people don't know what is real. They think this car is real. They think these seats are real. They think what they say is real. The true reality is what we discover in the silence. I grunt in agreement, and I marvel at where he's taking this conversation. Driver, did you ever leave your body? Author, yes, I have experienced that a bunch of times. I remember having the sense that I, whoever that I is, am hovering high up in the sky, and I'm looking down on the room in which I am, and I am watching myself as I'm interacting with the people in that room. Driver, so you have traveled to the astral planes. Wait till you get to the celestial ones. Some really beautiful things are waiting for you there. Our ride continues with stretches of silence interrupted by bursts of chatter. My driver tells me about the time in his life when he began to meditate over 35 years ago. I tell him about my visits to Mother Meera, a spiritual leader from India, and my experiences of the darshan ritual with her. As we pull up in front of the United Airlines terminal at O'Hare Airport, I grab my wallet and I'm surprised that we got here so quickly. Driver, I'm glad I got to drive you today. You have given me joy for the rest of my day. Author, thank you for the ride, and thank you so much for the conversation. After I pay the fare for this ride, he repeats an earlier comment. Driver, and remember, there are no accidents in life. I still get choked up when I read it. This is not an invitation to go out and take lots of taxi rides now, okay? But I want to really invite you to have the courage to play on these deeper levels, to notice the doors that are there and to open them, and to really enjoy the ride as you're in it. So thank you very much.